Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at VMware Explore. And today we have with us once again Michael Cade, senior technologist at Veeam. We have been talking to each other for so long over camera, but remotely. But this is the first time we are seeing each other in person. So the experience, is kind of different than sitting in front of a monitor. We are here at the event. I'm pretty sure that you have walked around. You have been keynote. What has been your takeaway from this day?
So I think for me, there's been a huge focus on the application and a huge focus on the developer. That was mentioned a lot, and I feel like as I've lived in this world for a bit now, the developer can be so many different areas. Like we might think of a developer as writing code, front end, back end, but actually you've got to start thinking about like the DevOps focus, principles, processes, and actually is the developer a good term, or should we start using things like platform engineer for people that look after any platform anywhere, whether it's virtualization, whether it's containerization, Kubernetes, etc. So I think that's it's interesting. That's kind of a take, and you can see that shift happening here this week around that. But then you've still got the traditional virtualization admins that are wanting to know how to run virtualization the best they possibly can in their environment.
It's kind of interesting. It's like the terms and jargon that we're using for the teams, DevOps, DevSecOps, like fashion, But when you talk about in the context of VMware, you talk about virtualization. VMware has been doing things that predates all these containers and so they are juggling between two different kind of problems, right? The traditional IT is there and then the modern IT is there. And when we look at Kasten Veeam, you folks are looking at totally different problem, but a lot of folks, they are trying to come from a traditional world. So when you do talk about this name change, how much is more in the label that is slapped on somebody's versus what is actually happening in? So I want to understand the real challenges that companies are facing when it comes to, you can use the word IT.
Yeah. So I think the fundamental for us is the story stays the same, right? We're backing up data. Backing up and recovering data, that's always the first bullet point, whether they're using physical, virtual, cloud native. And that's quite an easy story for us. We stay in that swim lane and we offer the ability to restore that data as fast as possible. We also offer the disaster recovery across all of those platforms. Where it gets quite interesting for us is, or at least for me as a technologist, is the portability of that data. How can we take a virtual machine and send it into a cloud-based EC2 instance in AWS, or how can I take an EC2 instance and bring it into vSphere? Because we're seeing a lot of that. Like, I think we're seeing a lot of, as much as the talk track out there is, we need to get to the cloud, we need to take advantage of all of that. The amount of customers that I'm speaking to about that repatriation of data, bringing it back on premises because I've got more control of that. So I think our challenges are the same. Backup for Kubernetes still needs to happen. Backup for virtual machines still need to happen. Where it gets really interesting for me, so I've been playing around automation, like you could almost call it DevOps, for a number of years, both in the virtualization space, cloud space, and now Kubernetes in the cloud native space. The evolution of a sysadmin, IT, is, well, how can I automate some of my daily tasks to free up my time to do more? How can I do more with that data? How can I leverage that data to make better business decisions, or just unlock it so that I'm not affecting anything in production, but I'm getting insight into that data to reduce risk or reduce cost? And reduce cost is always at the top of everyone's list. So I think the underpinning challenges of an IT blanket term for everyone that touches a computer is reduce cost, mitigate risk, and provide a better business outcome, or to evolve what we're doing on a daily basis within our IT infrastructure. And I think DevOps is a way of getting into that. I think that's an evolution of the sysadmin today, and a bit like what we saw from an Exchange admin back in the day. There's not many Exchange admins now, right? Because everything's moved to a SaaS-based platform, Microsoft 365. I feel like that is the sysadmin, the VI admin, the virtualization admin of VMware. They have to have an understanding more about a broader set of tooling, process, principle, and DevOps is the easy way to put that. But platform engineering seems to be sticking a lot more than DevOps. DevOps has kind of been maybe blurred since 2009 when it was first branded and it was a big buzzword. So I find platform engineering really sums up that the sysadmin needs to look after all of those areas, including backup, but you're looking at that physical, that virtual, that cloud, as in IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and then also cloud native, Kubernetes. The amount of container images that we're seeing off the shelf software, is pushing everyone towards that platform to host and run their application.
We not only live in a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cluster, multi-user world, multi-account world. So when you do look at data backup, data replication, we cannot even start to look at the problem areas because also the things move so fast. Which instance of data you're saved back, where it's saved, and how it's shared, who has the permission. So can you talk about the challenges that you see in this Kubernetes-driven multi-cloud world?
Yeah, I think the big, again, overarching to that is that the challenge is how do we protect it in a very dynamic way? Backup is always at the bottom of the list. It doesn't matter what platform it is. Backup, by all accounts, is pretty boring. I've been in it 7.5 years, I could probably say that. But we still need it, right? It's an insurance policy. You still need to make sure that you've got it. And as we move to cloud native, which in itself is a platform that enables dynamic workloads to spin up, spin down, and allows us to run our databases and data services either alongside or within the cluster, we have to be dynamic about how we protect that. We have to be a very easy way of being able to protect that because we want our sysadmins, we want them looking after how do they do more with that application, how do they evolve that, how do they upgrade it, how do they get more out of that. Backup should just be a tick in the box, an insurance policy. And it's how do you leverage that data management software, like from a Veeam perspective, to then do more. Backup's the easy part, right? It's the recovery of that and how quick we could do it. And I'll add the recovery becomes part of that migration and clone. How could I do more with that data using that? Which then automatically puts us up the interesting stack. It's no longer just backup is boring at the bottom of the list. When you start to unlock the data and you do more with it, and there's more use cases, it allows us to do more with it. So I think regardless of platform, but Kubernetes highlights that because of how dynamic it is from a resource scheduling point of view. But ultimately, being dynamic is, we still need to think about that from a virtual machine backup in VMware as well.
What kind of work is going on Kasten K10? If you can talk about some updates or what we should expect.
So one of the big things specifically around VMware is being able to support their customers, their workloads within Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. So being able to manage their supervisor clusters and protect their workloads within there. Always for us is going to be a focus on the application and the data service within that. So blueprints for us gives us a set of instructions to say this is how we're going to protect this particular data service. So things like Postgres, how do we PG dump that and how do we simplify that? Because again, it goes back to like the VI admin or the sysadmin. Not everyone wants to be writing YAML code or coding that. They want an easy button for that. So visualizing that, how do we visualize that? So simplifying that operations side of Kasten K10. Security is always a strong thing for us from a K10 release cycle, being able to provide not only immutability of where we're storing the backup data, but also thinking about, tell me if something out of the ordinary is happening to that bucket. Is someone trying to tamper with it? And I want to know ASAP if something is happening. So S3 detection, understanding a bit around that. I've said about us being the insurance policy or the last line of defense, but let's think about how do we help prevent as well? How do we get in front of that? And I've spoke about left and right of bang as well. So right of bang being something bad happened. Doesn't need to be ransomware, but it's quite topical. So we'll use ransomware as the big bang. Right of that is where Veeam and Kasten have always sat. How do we recover the data as fast as possible to get before the bang happened? But more and more features that we're bringing out is getting more towards that preventive task rather than just remediation. And I think that's quite an interesting take that we're exposing some of those things that are happening in the environment.
What is the next release of K10? And when is it scheduled? What are the new things that we can expect there?
So from a K10 point of view, our release cadence is we release every 2 weeks, and generally that means if the feature is ready, it goes out the door. But generally speaking, we release very much at the KubeCon timescale. So we're very fast approach in October, which is KubeCon NA Detroit. So we could expect to see the next big release there, and I'm sure we'll get to speak again about what's coming there. And then for the EU event, we just had the big release around there, which includes a lot of the stuff that I've just mentioned around what that payload looks like, what the detection results and stuff like that, the support for multiple platforms. I think another big area that we're focused on from an engineering point of view is scale. As we see more and more edge Kubernetes clusters, how do we manage those in a multi-cluster environment? So that's another area that you're hopefully potentially going to see when we get round to KubeCon and announcing what's coming.
Michael, once again, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talk about, of course, Kasten by VM, the challenges that are there for companies when it comes to backup and everything. And as usual, I'd love to have you back on the show, and now both remotely and in person.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me.